Now, Joe Biden, he's signed a raft of executive orders to boost the fight against things like COVID across the UK. Vaccinations accelerated, testing increased, emergency legislation being used to increase the production of essentials like masks, whilst President Biden is in the process of overturning the work of the previous administration. What can we expect next from Donald Trump? Anthony Scaramucci is the former White House communications director and the host of the absolutely stunning Mooch FM podcast. Download it if you're not doing so already. Anthony, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, it's great to be here, and thanks for having me back.
It's lovely. What a time! What a strange time for your country. Can I ask firstly? I mean, you're naturally a Republican, just not a big Trump man. What do you make of Joe Biden's first few days in office?
Well, there's nothing about what he's done so far that I dislike. I've been a classic center right person. I'm sort of agnostic on social issues, but what I would say to you is that we had a threat to the democracy. You had an insurrection at the Capitol 2 short weeks ago, and so the notion that Vice President Biden, now President Biden, is in place, and there's going to be a couple of things I disagree with him on. My a priori is the preservation of our democracy. So right now, I think he's done a good job. He's calmed things down. I don't know if you saw Dr. Anthony Fauci's press conference yesterday, but I thought that was very revealing. It was almost like we had this yoke of alarming dishonesty taken off of our scientists, and we now have an opportunity to tackle the disease pursuant to the factual basis of science, as opposed to the rhetoric and mendacity of our leader. And so I think that's great news. You're asking about what Mr. Trump's going to be doing after this. He's in trouble. And I know him very well. I said on Wednesday to somebody, what is he going to be doing on Thursday? He'll be playing golf because he'll be trying to send a message to people that he's not worried, which is a message that he's very worried. It's sort of that Shakespearean thing,
Does he worry?
Something isn't
yes,
true.
Indeed. Is he a warrior underneath that veneer of confidence and the kind of depths of vanity that, and he's not alone in that, lots of big successful business people and politicians have that, but he has it in bucket loads. Is he a man that would be concerned about the future?
He's a worrier. He's insecure. It's obvious because that's where all that overcompensation comes from and all that bluster and the orange makeup and all that sort of stuff, as opposed to just being who you are. But no, he is a worrier, and he's out there on his skis now because he's really hurt himself. He's been impeached twice. He's got to handle that conviction, that potentiality of conviction in the Senate. He's got SDNY, which is the Southern District of New York, which is a federal prosecution pending related to his IRS fraud. And again, he's innocent until proven guilty. I believe in the rule of law. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But he's also got issues related to the Trump Organization, where the accusation has been made that he inflated his income to get mortgages and he deflated it to pay taxes. And so the combination of those 3 or 4 things, plus the fact that he inspired an insurrection, and he will go down in history. And, people, they get alarmed at me for saying it this way, but I want to frame it for you. It's 50 years from now. It's 2071. And a historian is looking at video and looking at the documents and looking at what happened. Mr. Trump, President Trump, will go down as a domestic terrorist and an insurrectionist in the United States. Now, we try to normalize the presidency, and we try to normalize people that are president because it's an august role and everybody around the world respects that position historically. But he disgraced himself in that job and soiled himself. And he'll go down in history as a seditious traitor. I really do believe that. And from November 3rd to today, it is a evidence every day mounting as to why he was so unsuitable for that job.
But of course, in the meantime, Giuliani, Trump, Sidney Powell, various others, these guys aren't giving up. This election was stolen. They still maintain, Anthony.
Hey, listen, some of them are going to be censured by the court systems where they made those challenges. In the case of Sidney Powell, you just mentioned her. She's being sued for $1.3 billion by Dominion Voting. The right-wing media establishments in our country are literally running these infomercials in between their punditry, where the infomercial comes on and this professor professorial looking person says, well, we never saw any fraud, there was no fraud. And then they cut back to the television pundit that's chanting the fraud, fraud, fraud. And then they sell catheters and My Pillows in the commercial interruption. So it's an absurdity that we need to go after vigilantly. I don't like this stuff. I'm an American entrepreneur. I grew up in a blue collar family. I didn't expect myself to get this deep into American politics, but I'm here now and I absolutely love my country. We have to progress the country and make it more diverse and make it more fair from a social justice point of view. And we have to put down insurrectionists. And there are 12% of the people in the United States, Ian, that think the insurrection and the assault on the Capitol building was a good thing. So it's not just a couple of thousand people that were up on the hill,
Yep.
Breaking windows and chanting death to Mike Pence and death to Speaker Pelosi. We got a problem in the country, and we have to work on that every single day. And I'm committed to doing that.
What about Biden then? Let's just move to him, Anthony. I mean, has this guy had a bit of a free ride? I mean, the last time, I remember looking into stories about him, he had some fairly nefarious allegations about him, sexual assault allegations. There's the Ukraine issue with his son. I mean, is all of that gone away? Has it mysteriously disappeared? Should we still be asking questions about these things?
Well, people are going to be asking questions. These people are flawed. I'm flawed. I'm sure there's things that he's done in his career that he probably regrets. But he's not Trump, and he's not calling for a violent overthrow of the government that he was leading. You think about President Trump, and he's not calling for a renunciation of our democracy or the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power in the longest standing republic. So yes, I'm certain that Vice President Biden is flawed, and I'm certain that there are things in his background that you or I would find unsavory, because that's the nature of politics, and that's he's 47 years in politics. I'm sure that that's the case.
Yeah.
But what you do in our world is what we take the best that we can get in our lives and we try to make it better. And he only had two choices on November 3rd of 2020. And so my choice was him.
Yeah. 70 million people, of course, went the other way and voted 74 million. Yeah. I mean, Joe Biden's got to be mindful of that, right? If he wants to unify, and he talked a lot about healing, he's got to take 74 million people with him.
I agree with that. I have said that repeatedly. When I've met with his economic team, I reminded them of speeches that were made by Franklin Roosevelt in the 1940 election. He was up against an America First movement, literally called America First. It was sponsored by Charles Lindbergh, the aviator. And what Franklin Roosevelt said, if we don't create economic aspiration, we're not going to be able to dissipate this anger, this white nationalism, this populism. And so it was delayed by World War II. But once we got to the post-World War boom, all of that stuff dissipated. We're there again now. There's that tremendous anxiety. This feels a lot like the Herbert Hoover transfer, where the Republican lost the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And we're in the doldrums, the worst job numbers in the modern era right now, a pandemic. There's an assortment of things going on right now that we have to rebuild from. And he has to figure out a way to knit those people back into the society that feel disaffected by the establishment. So yes, we agree on that. But the only way you can do that, in my opinion, is to provide blue collar and middle income people economic aspiration in their lives. And it's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think we can do it.
What of course, many of those Trump voters liked, and you will be more aware of this when you were crafting speeches and answers when you were there in the White House and behind the scenes in the Oval Office and the like. The whole DNA of Trump is that he wasn't establishment. He wasn't a Biden or an Obama or a Bush. This is a guy that spoke a very different language. He stood up to China. He wasn't afraid to say to Angela Merkel, "You're not paying enough into NATO. We're paying it all. What are you guys doing? Who are these WHO guys?" People liked that unconventional approach, and he was voted in because of that. I mean, again, he might have got a whole bunch of things wrong, Anthony, but can you still see why that is an attraction? The politician that goes off-piste, the politician that doesn't play by the conventional Capitol Hill rule book. That's very attractive to a lot of people.
Well, listen, we agree. I mean, I would tell the Republican Party, you need to elect somebody who you thought Mr. Trump was, okay? And that would be this transformative post-partisan leader that spoke with authenticity to the American people, that challenged things in the establishment or the orthodoxy that weren't working for the common person. But that wasn't Mr. Trump. Ultimately, he had these flaws. It was a combination of his insecurity, his lack of executive management skills, the inability to share credit with anybody, the distrust of experts when people came into his office and told him, well, you should do it X, Y, Z, and here's my 40 years of experience as to why. He would steamroll those people. And so, yes, there were elements of his personality that were enjoyable. He's a great communicator. He's got very good political instincts, but he just did not have the suitability and the personality to manage the executive branch of the United States. And then, of course, it spiraled into all that mania. The last point I want to make is once he attacked my wife, I mean, your viewers are probably figuring out I'm not Ted Cruz. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a blue collar kid that's lived a good part of the American dream. You're not allowed to go after my wife on the presidential Twitter feed. Yeah. And so I took the gloves off and mauled him. And at the end of the day, people that grow up in a neighborhood like mine, they don't like that in a president. You leave civilians. If you don't like what I'm saying about you on television, attack me. Don't go after my family members. And so there was something very distasteful and very dishonest about him. And I'm so glad that he's out of office, and he's never coming back. By the way, I'll make that prediction.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that was my last question.
He's never coming back.
He said it on the tarmac before he jumped on that jet to the Sunshine State.
Never coming back.
He said, "I'll be back in some form."
No, we'll make good sure of that it's lights out for him. And just remember, there are 10 Republicans that are looking in the mirror every morning and they see a future president. And they're going to be like those little goblins in the Ghost movie from 30 years ago that come up and reach for Mr. Trump and to send him into Hades. They don't want to have anything to do with him now that he's off the stage.
Who will lead the Republicans in 2024?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm hoping it's not a Trump acolyte or a Trump sycophant.
Could it be Anthony Scaramucci?
No, I'm running for re-election in my marriage, Ian. And so, I mean, I'm campaigning every day. And by the way,
it's a daily
these are like one day terms out here. So, and for all I know, I could be term limited. So I'm just going to be focusing on my family and my business.
That's good advice, Anthony. It's always good to speak. We will speak again. Anthony Scaramucci, of course, former White House communications director, with us here on Talk Radio.